Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to another episode of In and Around Pleasant Hill with me, Alex Codadat. Actually, today is going to be our episode number 7. I'm really excited. We have our guest, Arek Puzia. Eric, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, Alex. Thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for asking. And as always, I would appreciate if you guys can subscribe, share with your family and friends, and get them to subscribe. And we love to see those 5-star reviews on our podcast also too. So we want to dive right into it. So Eric, you want to give an introduction about you, please?
Sure. So before I actually kick it off, my compliance folks always make me say this. So my legalese part is, as a registered investment advisory firm, they make me make a statement that this podcast or interview is just my opinion, doesn't necessarily reflect that of the firm. And I'm just providing educational information on our chat today. There's not any specific advice or recommendations. Some areas that I speak about are really subject to change without notice. It's a field that changes very quickly. So depending on how far away from today's date you're listening to this podcast or interview, just realize the rules may have changed based on what we talk about. So with that out of the way, yes, so I'm Arek Puzia. A little bit about my background. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, though I was originally born in Poland. My parents moved out to this area around the age of me being 5 or 6. So I attended first grade in Walnut Creek before my parents moved out to Antioch, and that's where I grew up, going all the way through Deer Valley High School. I then went on to UCLA for my undergrad degree. I worked for a little bit at IBM before going back to school. I got my graduate degree at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. And then I actually went out to London and worked in investment banking for a number of years before we founded Pathwise.
Wow, interesting. Okay. All right, so that's wonderful. So now, your profession, you're a certified financial planner, correct?
I am. So I am a certified financial planner. I also hold the certified public accountant or CPA designation, and it's an active license that I have right now. There's also some, along with that, I have some extra training specifically in personal finance.
Right, right. That's wonderful. So now, Eric, about 3, 4 weeks ago, I had another guest, and you know her, Cynthia Sayek, and we were talking about the transfer of wealth between the baby boomers and Generation X and the millennials, and obviously, you guys are seeing the same thing too in the financial services also too, correct?
We are. We get that quite often, actually. Usually the catalyst for many clients coming to meet with us is that a loved one has passed away. They're going to be coming into an inheritance, and they need to understand the tax implications of that, and as well as do some planning around, from a financial perspective, around what should they do with this money that all of a sudden they have come into. Sometimes they're expecting an inheritance, sometimes it comes out of the blue and they have really no expectation of it, or were they knowledgeable about it, and so now they need to take some action based on this new information.
So now, based on your expertise, how long have you been a financial in your industry now?
So on the retail side, meaning helping people, I've been doing this for just about a decade now.
Okay.
But in addition to that, when I was in London, for example, we were helping large, what are called sovereign wealth funds, and more corporate entities manage some of their finances. So overall, I've been in the field for about 15 years.
Okay. So now, let's say somebody's grandma just passes away, and now they've just inherited $1 million worth of stocks and bonds and investments that maybe you guys were managing for them. Um, what do you advise them? Do you advise them to keep it in there and move forward with that, or take it out? Or I mean, like, and because some of these folks, they're young, they don't know much about investment, or maybe they don't want to invest, maybe they want to pull it out. What does that conversation look like?
Yeah, I mean, usually first I tell them, kudos to talking to a professional about it first, because people don't realize that it's more complicated than me just inheriting assets or money. it depends on what it is exactly that you're inheriting. So you can inherit stocks and bonds in a retirement account, and that has a very different tax implication for you as a person than inheriting stocks and bonds in a regular brokerage account. And so you may inherit $1 million, but the amount that you get to keep in your pocket might be $1 million, or it might be a lot less than $1 million. So first and foremost, I help them understand what it is exactly that they inherited, because most people don't truly grasp it. They say, yes, we inherited some assets, but like I said, there's a lot of tax implications that can come along with that. So once we understand how much actual money they will have once taxes and other things have been paid for, then we can start planning around what should we do with this money? Should we leave it invested for their own future, or maybe even for their children's future? I mean, the one interesting aspect of inheritance nowadays that we're finding is, grandma and grandpa and mom and dad are living a lot longer than before. So oftentimes what's happening is, by the time the person is inheriting from their mom or dad any sort of assets, they themselves are in their 60s, sometimes in their 70s. We have clients in their 70s whose parents are still alive. And so that changes the dynamic a lot, because sometimes that inheritance is no longer relevant for you. Maybe it's something we start thinking about for your children.
Right, right, right. Yeah. Now, also, what's scary, and I see this thing kind of repeating itself, especially from 1999 and then 2006 and 7. A lot of speculation out there. I see a lot of folks. They grab their phone, they got those apps. Robin, I believe it's called Robinhood, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Robinhood, and all of a sudden you got a guy that doesn't know anything about financial investments, or now they're giving out advice. Hey, you need to buy Bitcoin. Hey, you need to buy this. You need to buy that. Look at me. I had $500. Now I got $4,000. I mean, I know people that have young kids, 14, 13 years old, investing. They're investing under their parents' name. I mean, aren't these red flags, or am I missing something here?
So, we are human, and it's that saying that they say that history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it certainly echoes. And I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, for those who are interested, you can go back hundreds of years. One of the biggest documented kind of investing crazes was this tulip craze back in Holland about 400 years ago.
Yeah.
And really, over the last hundreds of years, I mean, like I said, it's hundreds and hundreds of years, there have been all sorts of examples of speculative crazes that have kind of taken hold in the human psyche. And certainly, the advent of newspapers and print, and as soon as people were able to start communicating, we as humans communicate with stories and ideas, and our brain uses what's called heuristics, which are shortcuts. We can't process all the information out there, even before social media and Robinhood and all of these, where we get information constantly on our phones. We were getting bombarded by information, and our brain just takes these shortcuts for us to process this information. And so it's very easy for people to get caught up in all sorts of crazes, right? And the vast majority of them end up in tears, but at the same time, there's a lot of wealth that gets created in the meantime. And so it's this game a little bit of hot potato, and it's a matter of how much you want to try and play in it. And I would argue, for most people, when you play with these kinds of things, like the topic of the day nowadays is Bitcoin or SPACs. SPACs, this really boring investment vehicle called a SPAC, or Special Purpose Acquisition Company, SPAC, has all of a sudden taken over and become really popular out of nowhere. I mean, it's been around for a long time. It just all of a sudden caught on in social media, and you get people, but that's not really investing. That's really just speculating. That's where people assume that investing is like gambling, right? And they're right. If they're talking about things like that, that's what it is. It's gambling. Hey, sometimes you get lucky and you buy Bitcoin for 5 cents and you hold on to it till it's $50,000, and you walk away from the casino, a very, very happy man or woman. But that is the 1 in a million, or even less so, probably 1 in a billion scenario. Most people during these speculative crazes are going to walk away much poorer than they started.
But Eric, if you look at history, like you said, it echoes, right? Every time we've got into this kind of a craze speculation, afterward it's become a disaster. I mean, do you see a disaster coming? I mean, like I said, 1999 with the dot com. And then the real estate speculation. I remember in 2006, people would go to Antioch, where you grew up. They would go there, they buy, the house wasn't even built yet. By the time it got built, it already went up $200,000, right? And
Yeah,
then look what happened to Antioch. I mean, when
that's
it
right.
crashed, I mean, it just crashed,
Yes.
right? I mean, so it's like, do you see a disaster? I mean, when you got lumber 320% gone up, I mean, it's, I don't know. I mean, this is your profession, but do you see, I mean, aren't, isn't this, do you think there's going to be a disaster that's going to be coming?
I certainly think there's going to be pockets where you're going to have problems, and we'll see that. That timing these things is nearly impossible. I remember I was actually in business school from 2007 to 2009, and I actually very vividly remember being in an economics class in business school at University of Chicago, and in 2007. So this was fall of 2007. So right before things started to crumble, and I remember one of my professors showing us the data, and it was very clear that things were out of whack. But he even admitted, he said, the thing is, the timing of when this is going to turn is basically impossible to predict, right? And it
Yeah,
happened pretty fast. I mean, within the next year or two,
yeah,
but it's very hard. I mean, these speculative bubbles can go on for a long, long time. The dot-com bubble was growing for about a decade. So
yeah,
even if, let's say, in 1995, you thought this was getting out of control, there was still almost 6 years left before anything actually happened, right? And one thing I always want to remind people of is even in the year 2000, 2001, 2002, if
yeah,
you had a broadly diversified, there were parts of your portfolio that actually did very well in 2001 and 2002. And there were parts of your portfolio that did very well in 2008 and 2009, right? And there were parts of your portfolio that did very well last year, kind of during the COVID hiccup, let's call it, right? Because it was fairly short lived. So when you diversify, that's kind of probably your only free lunch in investing is being diversified. It's when you take these concentrated large positions that you're really betting on, one thing working out for you. And if it does, that's great. But if it doesn't, it can really, really, decimate you.
it can. Yeah, absolutely. Like last year, when the COVID happened, I knew it was going to bounce back. I mean, the stock market went down as low as 19,000 and then it bumped back up. But for real estate, I mean, since last year until now, home values around here have gone up to $300,000. When we're selling homes in Concord, I'm talking about a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,600 square feet house. We're selling it for $1 million,
Yes,
right? And,
that's
and
right.
this was in COVID because it goes back to supply and demand. So, but I mean, it's like, but how long does that stay like that? I know that they want to make sure that the economy keeps moving forward, but it's just like I keep seeing all these signs. And actually, when the market crashed, I did very well because I was able to come in and buy homes at very, very. I mean, we're buying homes for, you could buy homes in Antioch for $50,000,
That's
right?
right. That's
You
right.
know,
And
and
that's really you hit the nail on the head. What you have to do, same thing. I mean, when last March rolled around,
yeah,
I took a step back. I said, I usually don't do a lot during the worst of it because you kind of want to let the dust settle a little
yeah,
bit to see what
yeah,
happened. But once we started getting into April,
yeah,
and I still saw people lining up for toilet paper and
yeah.
buying, people were buying water. They were starting to make decisions that were purely emotional. They didn't
Yep.
really have any connection to reality. Once that started happening, I was the same way. I mean, personally, I like regular stocks and bonds of a portfolio more than I like real estate, just because I don't like the aspect of managing real
Yep.
estate. But
Yep.
even I last year during the COVID crisis bought
Yep.
3 properties. I bought every single stock that I could find. I mean, every dollar I had available to
Yep.
invest last year, I was investing. And I'll be honest, I had no clue that we were going to turn around within 12 months. I did not
Yeah.
expect that we were going to turn around that quickly. But I was very, very confident that 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line, I was going to be significantly better off by being invested during a period like last year
Yeah.
than I would be not in a period like last year,
I,
not being invested.
I just think that these opportunities pop up once in a while and we have to dive into them and really take advantage of them. And, I read a book, I forgot what it was, about Warren Buffett, and it said, you make money if the market goes up, down, or flat. So, but yeah, I mean, in 2008, I remember we used to go to auctions, and there were homes selling 300 homes. There were companies like Reddick, Hart, Hudson, and Marshall, and it was unbelievable. I don't think the real estate market, a lot of people are waiting and thinking the real estate market's going to crash. I don't think the real estate market's going to crash. And every time something different goes down, I really think this time, I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, when you got a 15-year-old speculating the market and talking about Bitcoins and this and that, I still can't figure out Bitcoins. Yesterday, me and one of my agents were sitting in the car, and I'm like, how is this possible? Something that's worth $50,000 and you can't even see it. You can't even touch it, right? I mean, who created this? Like, how did this happen, right?
Yeah, so I mean, the technology behind Bitcoin is actually pretty incredible, and I think has a lot of everyday uses. And Bitcoin in itself, fairly or unfairly, gets compared to a lot of different assets. So you can compare it to gold, which has, for example, very little actual use, right? Or even more so, things like the art market. I mean, people really get into the art market, and even beyond Bitcoin now, these NFTs or non-fungible tokens have become really popular. And without going into crazy detail of what they are, they're basically very unique hashtags of codes that tie to a specific item, like a picture or something along those lines. And so there's only one of them that can possibly exist in the world. So it creates scarcity, and people have always liked scarcity. For example, growing up, I was a numismatist, and to some degree I still am. I'm not nearly as involved anymore in the hobby, but it's coin collecting, and I enjoyed coin collecting. And it would be incredible, because you can buy coins that were from the days of the Roman Empire, from Caesar-based coins, and they might cost you $30, and you might buy coins from 15 years ago, from the early 2000s or from the 90s, and that same coin might cost you $10,000. And so it's really incredible, because the lure of scarcity of anything is kind of what drives people towards it.
Yeah.
And what I personally don't like, I don't like things like gold. I don't like things like Bitcoin personally. And it's not because you can't make money doing this stuff. It's because I simply don't like assets that their only value is hoping that somebody else is going to pay me more than what I paid for them, right? I like assets that generate some value to the world. So a business takes a bunch of resources, it creates some value, right? A restaurant in Pleasant Hill creates value. I can go and pick up dinner. They can cook food that I otherwise wouldn't be able to cook myself, right? Real estate provides shelter. Somebody, as humans, we need shelter. We need a place to sleep. We need a place to cook, all of these other things. So there's actual value in it. Whereas things like, a diamond or gold or Bitcoin, what you're really, or coal for that matter. I mean, coal has some real value because you can use it for stored energy, but even certain commodities, it's more about what somebody else is willing to pay for them.
Right. All right. Well, now let's talk about um, investments. Like, where do you start? From where? I mean, what is your advice to folks if they want to be able to retire at a certain age? Now, let's put on your certified financial planner hat and give us an advice. Like, where do you start when it comes to investing?
Yeah, I mean, it differs for everyone. Most people, their first foray into investing is they get a job and they have to sign up for a 401k plan, right? And nowadays companies will match money that you put into a 401k plan. And most people who go to work will have some access to some retirement plan. Not every company does, but more and more, even small companies now are offering retirement plans. And so that's usually the first introduction to someone for investing. And that's when they have to start learning about things like mutual funds and ETFs and all of this kind of terminology. The nice thing is there's honestly a lot of information and online. Unfortunately, it's hard to tell which is the good information versus which is the more salesy information, right? But there are a lot of good books. The person who came up with Vanguard, the big firm, Bogle is his last name, so you can look up. There's some books written by him. He passed away recently, but he's kind of the let's call it the godfather of investing, and what I would at least call investing, right? Which is long-term, you put money away in a diversified portfolio, you focus on keeping your costs low, and you buy a basket of stocks and maybe bonds, depending on the situation. I generally stay almost solely invested in stock ETFs and stock mutual funds personally, but absolutely bonds are an appropriate part of a portfolio as well. Real estate is an appropriate part of a portfolio. There's a lot of different assets to building out a globally diversified portfolio. So you want to own stocks from the US, own stocks that are international, from countries like China, from countries like France and Canada and Australia. And so a good starting point is really, one of these books like by John Bogle of Vanguard. There's many out there. Random Walk Down Wall Street is a good read. Stocks for the Long Run, which are written by a professor, has been a very popular book for decades now. And so that one's gone through a couple of editions. Lots of good different books. So that's what I would start someone, when it comes to investing, just learning the basics, getting comfortable with the process. The nice thing is that early in your investing life, the most important thing you can do is really get your budget in order. So most people focus a little bit too much on trying to hit it big, or like what's the right investment to put my money in. But if your budget isn't in order, you're never really going to have enough money to wager in investing in order for it to grow anyway. So creating a strong budget, I would say, is more important in your early years than getting the investing part right. The most important thing is you want to stay away from scams, Ponzi schemes, speculative bubbles. Those are the things that will usually hit you the hardest and kind of wipe out before you even get started, they'll kind of wipe you out.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about if you start your own business? You say, when you work for somebody, obviously you have 401k, but what about if you start your own business? You still, create a 401k, or do you look at other vehicles for
Yeah.
investing?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it gets a little complicated because you start getting into a lot of IRS tax issues, but absolutely you can create your own 401k. You can create what's called a SEP IRA, which is a little bit easier than a solo 401k, but it has some limitations that a 401k doesn't. So it really depends on what kind of business you form. Is it just a regular business that you put on the Schedule C of your tax return? Is it something like an S corporation, which is really a separate legal entity that issues you what's called a K-1? So if you set up an S corporation, you have to do the corporation has to do its own tax return. So that provides some opportunities, but also creates some issues if you do something like set up an S corporation. If you run your own firm, do you have employees? Because there's a lot of rules around retirement plans. So you'll want to, if you're doing your own business, your CPA can be a great help, or whoever's helping you on the tax side, just to understand what kind of accounts you can set up as a business owner and what the implication is of setting up those accounts, especially if you have employees, because you might be required to set aside money for your employees as well into their retirement accounts. So sometimes business owners don't realize that, and oftentimes they want to do that, right? If you have good employees, you want to reward them, you want to keep them. So a retirement account is a great way to do that.
Now, what about for folks that have kids like me, and they want to be able to put some money away for their children for education? What programs are there out there that they can take advantage of?
Sure. So there's a number of programs for saving for a college education. Probably the most popular and well-known one is called a 529 plan. And it sounds much more complicated than it really is. There's one set up by every state, and you do not have to use the one that in the state that you live in. So for certain individuals, if you're listening to this interview and you live in another state, your state might allow you to do a tax deduction for any money that you put into a 529 plan, but then you usually have to use that state's 529 plan. We here are sitting in California. California does not have that benefit. So frankly, you can use any state's 529 plan as a California resident, and it's not going to change the tax situation. The main benefit of a 529 plan is the money that you invest into it will grow over the years. And as long as that money is used for paying for school, which now has expanded to be including private school, K through 12 private school, but also includes regular college that we all think of as like a 4-year college, but it can be community college. It can be a school that's, if you want to be a dancer, dance school. If you want to be a welder or a truck driver, any type of occupational school would work as well. So many of the costs can be covered by a 529 plan. So the biggest benefit of a 529 plan is setting it up early in a child's life, ideally within a few months of them getting their social security number and being born. If you can sock money away into that and let it grow, that's a great way to do it. You can save money just in a regular investment account. And the advantage of that is it doesn't have to be used for education. You don't get as much of a tax benefit, but if you structure the investments correctly, the taxes will probably be fairly low anyway, and it gives a lot more flexibility. Maybe your child gets a lot of scholarships, or maybe your child chooses not to go to college, and you can give them this money instead for a down payment on a house, help with a wedding, whatever the case may be, to help them get life started. So that's usually a very good way to help them save for college. But honestly, the best way you can help your kids that I found is, especially kids, right now we have a great employment situation, at least here in the San Francisco Bay Area, where companies can't hire employees fast enough. And so that's allowing a lot of younger and younger people to get basic jobs. And if somebody has a job, if a child has a job, as long as they have earned income, so again, income that they've earned from working a regular job, babysitting, mowing lawns, they can have established what's called a Roth IRA account. And the beauty of a Roth IRA account is whatever amount it grows to over their lifetime, when they take it out, it is tax-free. It is one of the best deals that you can have. And if you can get somebody who's 13 or 14 or 15 years old on that road, and the most that they can contribute is $6,000 a year, but it's dependent on their earned income, so they have to earn at least that. If you can help them by helping them contribute the maximum they're allowed each year, starting at age 14 or 15, and they keep that habit up over the years, they'll end up likely with over $1 million when they go to retire, just in that little help. So that's probably one of the best ways I've seen people help their kids.
That is so on. Too bad my kids are too young. Ryan is only 9, so I don't think I can legally do that yet, right?
I mean, you can have, I've seen kids who take pictures, right? They do marketing photos and get paid for it. And, even at 2 years old.
Actually, so, my daughter comes to the office once in a while and she wants to put the stamps on the mail, right?
There you go.
Like, hey, Dad, I want to come and do the mail. Yeah, hey, if I can do it, I'll do it then.
Yeah, I mean, look, the IRS, it has to be a legitimate job that they get paid for. So you can't just make something up, but it can be as basic as sweeping the office or cleaning, vacuuming the office. So,
but is there age though, Eric? Did it have to be a certain age if they're your children?
If they're your children, you do not have to have them be a certain age, as long as it's within legal. You can't have them, operate machinery. There's OSHA that have to be followed, right?
Driving a big rig.
Yeah, exactly. So it has to be age appropriate, right? And you're going to have a hard time telling the IRS that your 6-year-old was answering client emails, right? So that's not going to pass muster.
But Eric, these kids these days, they're 2 years old. They're already doing programming.
Mm-hmm. That's right. No, there's, I would say there's a lot of different ways that kids can help in an office, or, they can do other things, babysitting, mowing lawns. You just have to go to record.
Giving dad a massage after a stressful day.
That would be a personal service. No chores. Chores are not allowed.
Yeah. So what about, I see a lot of baby boomers, they're trying to pull out a reverse mortgage, and they're like, you know what, I want to invest in an annuity. What is your take on this whole annuity? And for, especially elderly people, they're getting reverse mortgage, they get 30, 40,000 cash out. And then you got these companies that are trying to sell them annuities. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, Annuities have their place. Any insurance product has its place in a financial plan, but
Okay.
the purpose of insurance, whether it's an annuity, whether it's life insurance, whether it's home and auto insurance, is what we call risk mitigation. That's what insurance companies do. They diversify risk. So, you and I, if our house burnt down and we have a house that costs $800,000 to rebuild, that would be very hard on our financial situation, right? For you and I to write a check for $800,000 would be very painful. So because of that, we pay an insurance company a small amount each year so that if our house were to burn down or something else happened tragically to our house, they can help us. And the way insurance companies are able to do that is because they write policies on 10,000 different houses. So they start to follow what's called the law of large numbers. So there's some mathematics that go into insurance, and they can predict fairly well how much money they have to collect in so that they have to pay money out. But that's what an insurance company does at its heart, is it basically takes risk and spreads it out. So people don't get hit with a big tragic type of risk outcome. And so unfortunately, there's been a lot of people that have twisted what an insurance company does into calling it investments. And it simply isn't an investment, right? An annuity is not an investment. An annuity is a risk mitigation tool. It is a contract that you sign with an insurance company where you give them some amount of money and they guarantee you a monthly payment or a quarterly payment, whatever time period it is, for the rest of your life. Right. And so again, you're taking out this risk that I'm going to outlive my money, because unless the insurance company goes bankrupt and can't pay you, they're going to pay you for the rest of your life. And so the problem is annuities get paid out based on current interest rates in the marketplace, which right now are very low. Anybody who has a savings account or checking account, you realize you're earning next to nothing on your cash, but while inflation is still 2 or 3%. So your cash is still losing 2 or 3% every year, and you're earning almost nothing on your cash. And annuities by insurance companies largely get priced based on the current level of interest rates. And I won't go into the details of why that is, but that's basically what it is. And so the challenge with doing something like taking out a reverse mortgage and then taking that money and going out and buying an annuity is almost certainly the money the interest rate that you pay on your reverse mortgage is going to be higher than the interest rate that you're earning on the annuity that you get, right? So it's hard to justify that making any sort of sense, because again, you're paying a higher interest rate than you're getting. So it would be the equivalent of, borrowing money at 5% interest and then investing it at 2 or 3% interest. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yep. Eric, so let's talk about your company, and the products and services that you guys offer, and what is the minimum, the fees? Can you talk about that really quickly, please?
Yeah, sure. So we are based here in downtown Pleasant Hill in the Citibank building across from Jack's Restaurant. We are a wealth management firm. We have about just over 100 clients currently. We manage about $130 million. Our services, the best way I would describe us is essentially like your financial quarterback. So people that come to us, we try and overlook your entire financial life. So we're reviewing what your tax situation is. We're reviewing the insurance products that you have. We're reviewing your estate plan. So I know you had Cindy Seg on your podcast not too long ago, who I know her as well. We have many mutual clients. So we might work with somebody like Cindy to make sure that your estate plan is in order. We certainly help with all sorts of investments. We also help a lot with how to be tax efficient around investments. So what an investment might make sense for person A, but it might not make sense for person B simply because of tax issues involved, right? Again, taxes start getting very complicated. And for those of us living in California, taxes can get very high very quickly. And so being tax efficient and being tax smart is a big part of what we do. We don't necessarily, I would say, have an asset minimum. I would say it probably doesn't make sense to come to us until you've saved up or have at least $500,000 of liquid savings. There just isn't a lot that we can do for you if you have less than $500,000. We charge it's a scaled fee, but it's basically 1% of the assets that we manage. So pretty straightforward. I think the biggest differentiator and the biggest thing to note about our firm is we are a fiduciary. So we're not tied to any insurance company. We're not tied to any bank. Our bosses are our clients. And so the advantage of that is it's like going to your doctor or to your lawyer, right? We're working to do everything in your best interest. We have no ulterior motives. The only money we get paid is from our clients. We do not earn commissions on anything we sell. We don't sell you insurance. We'll tell you what kind of insurance you need or don't need, and we'll help you buy that insurance, but we don't earn any sort of fee on insurance. We don't earn any sort of fee on helping you set up your estate plan. Any professional that we recommend to you, we do not take any sort of payment from them, nor do we pay anyone for any sort of referral. So that fiduciary duty, that acting in your best interest, can be often unique because anybody can call themselves a financial advisor. An insurance salesman can call themselves a financial advisor. Currently, there's no legal definition of that word. And so, or that term, I should say. And so it's really important that you understand what the motivations and incentives are for an advisor. And for us, the motivations and incentives are to have happy clients who refer others to us and doing a great job for them. Obviously, we can't predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen, but we certainly do our best to stay on top of the news, stay on top of the new laws that are coming out. What's the best way to approach retirement or investments, or what the new studies are showing. We're very academic in our approach, so we try and stay away from any speculation and things like that.
Wonderful. And if they want to contact you, what's the best contact if someone who wants to get a hold of you?
Sure. So you can either shoot us an email. Mine email is Arek, but it's spelled A like Apple, R like Robert, E, K like kite. So Arek, AREK, at pathwise.co. So there's no M, it's just .co. You can also give me a call. The office number is 925-939-5607. You can also go to our website, www.pathwise.co. So again, there's no M at the end. Any of those ways, you can always reach out and we'll talk with someone, and really under no obligation. The first meeting, there's no cost. You're welcome to come and we won't give you advice necessarily in the first meeting, but we can just tell you if you're a good fit for somebody like our firm. Sometimes we have an hourly financial planner that we work with based out of Albany. We think very highly of her. So some clients where they just really have some basic questions or basic issues that they have to resolve, we can put you in touch with somebody that can help you depending on what your needs are. So we are not salesy. We're a small firm by design. We want to stay small. So we're not looking to have 200 clients. We're really kind of close to capacity or approaching capacity in the number of clients that we have. So we really are looking for a fit that makes sense for everyone when you reach out to us. So always feel free to reach out.
Well, Arek, I want to thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex.
Okay. So do me a favor, guys, and watch the future episodes. Make sure you're listening and subscribe, and even share with someone you think that might benefit. And I hope that it inspires as many people as possible. You guys, again, Arek, I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll be doing more podcasts in the future. Take care, Arek.
Thanks, Alex. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.